Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast, Unresolved Textual Tension. It's me, your host, Maria, and with me today are my handsome bitches, Katie and William.
The book we're doing today is The Lies of Locke Lamora by, I forget his name.
Scott Lynch.
Scott Lynch, and he hasn't published a book in 12 years, so I don't feel bad about forgetting it. This was very big in like the 2010s-ish. This book was very popular. It was popular about the same time as Name of the Wind, and the last book was published at about the same time.
I was going to say, when I saw it on the list, and I was like, wait, this sounds really familiar, and for some reason I'm picturing What's-His-Face from Name of the Wind when I'm picturing this book's title.
And when this first came out, I remember being like, I don't want to read this. This seems like it's going to be like goofy banter, haha, wish fulfillment. And having read it, I will leave. I'll leave you guys in suspense as to whether I think that's accurate or not. But Katie, what did you think of this book?
I thoroughly enjoyed the beginning, unlike you guys, I guess. I thought the beginning was clever. I thought it was cute. Well, not okay. Wait, let me rephrase that real quick. I don't think cute's the right word here. I really enjoyed the play on words. Usually when it's, I'm super clever and I'm talking real quick and we're going to go back and forth at 2.7 times speed, might be a little overwhelming. But I thought the content of what was being given to me was fairly enjoyable. The very, very beginning was like, But then as it continued on, I thought the prowess of the author going back and forth at the beginning was very useful. I thought it was skillful. I thought the stories being told and the language being used was really fun and engaging. And then all of a sudden, it kind of just took like a nosedive at a point, and the characters suddenly stopped acting like themselves almost. And then like it didn't do anything I thought it would do, not in a good way necessarily. And I don't know. I'm like, meh. It was a dinner from Steak and Shake. It was a dinner from Outback Steakhouse. It did it, I guess, but there was meat on the table. But I don't want it again, I guess.
Maria, give us a short premise and then your feelings on the book.
Okay, so the premise of this book, give me one sec, guys. I'm going to pull everything closer.
We have dog. She has dog problems, guys. She's being dogged by a cute dog.
I am being dogged. This book is set in a kind of like fantasy Venice setting, like a fantasy Italy. Not exactly. It's kind of like borrowing from a butt ton of different things, but think like Europe, city-states, that kind of thing. Not like giant countries, but like a lot of independent city-states. Think that.
I was picturing basically like not Vienna? Yeah. What? No. Italy. I was picturing Italy.
Yeah. And that's why I said it's got like a Venetian Venice vibe. But anyway, it's a fantasy setting with magique, but like not daily accessible magique. And it is about it's about thieves, specifically a group of thieves called the Gentlemen Bastards, who are not your common what do they call it? Second story thieves that are just going into houses and stealing stuff or pickpocketing. No, these are con artists. And they're set up in a world where there isn't really, for some reason, any other con artists around.
Yeah, like that's also another thing, but whatever.
One guy invented conning and big, long, complicated cons, but it's whatever. And it is the story of Locke Lamora, who's our main character, and the book weaves back and forth between his childhood and what's happening in the main setting. His childhood is him going from like nameless street urchin to becoming a thief, getting taken in by this group, the Gentlemen Bastards, learning the conning arts, and then the current plot. And I say current plot with the loosest
caveat
I can possibly give it, because the first 6 hours is garbage. It is garbage. It is not. Well, no. Listen, as far as the plot goes, the actual plot of this book doesn't start until 6 hours in.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. Yes,
but that's does, so from from a structural level, that is garbage. You shouldn't have to be 6 hours into a book for the actual plot to start.
Yeah, but it's like what? It's like 22 hours though. So like that's
So there's a specific like percentage of a book that the plot structure is supposed to follow, like the inciting incident should happen by this percentage of the book in, and this one pushes it way farther into the structure than it actually should, because the book seems like the inciting incident is one thing and then the actual plot will be another thing.
okay, let me then alter what I said with what I really mean, which is I thought it was going to do something else with the plot. I thought it was going to be different, and so I was accepting of the back and forth in the the backstory,
first 6
the build up.
hours?
Yes, but I thought it was good for that purpose of what I thought the plot was going to be, and then the plot just like kind of.
Oh, see, I knew the whole time that first 6 hours that what I was reading was not the plot, that it was just a very long preamble. But anyway, basically this book starts with a long con that the Gentlemen Bastards, the group of thieves that our boy Locke Lamora is the head of, and it is this long con, and eventually 6 hours in, you realize, oh, this thing we've been listening to this whole time is not the actual plot, and honestly is going to be so peripheral to the actual plot, and that the actual plot is that there's this new guy in town. There's a lot of different factions, gangs, and stuff in the area. There's like the gangs and thieves, which are led by Kappa Barsabi, who is like, he is the ultimate gang leader, and then there's a bunch of little mini gangs that are all underneath him. So it's kind of like the pyramid scheme of gangs, if you will. And Kappa Barsabi's at the tippy top. Then you have the Duke and his people. The Duke is kind of like the face, the ruling face of the town, and then there's all of the nobles underneath him, and then he has the yellow guards who are like the city guards, and then you have the merchants, and those three, there is a secret piece between all of them where the thieves are allowed to rob the merchants and non-nobles. Nobles are kept out of it. The yellow jackets, unless you are actively caught in it, kind of keep, ignore you. So at one point, this land of Camor is talked about how it's the safest place if you don't know what's actually happening. There's these very specific things. But then a new man on campus shows up, and it's the Grey King, and he is killing a bunch of Kappa Barsavi's men. This comes in 6 hours into the book. You don't know about this until 6 hours into the goddamn book.
So I definitely would just like to premise this with what I thought the plot was going to be, which is I thought it was about him duping the Don and his wife, and I thought they were going to go to this other country, and I thought that something was going to go wrong. And I thought the plot was going to be them pretending or actually, or to whatever degree, getting the brandy, which we'll get to, they say they're going to do in this little scheme. And that was just simply the plot. I thought that one heist was the plot. Yep. And then when this Grey King nonsense starts coming in, I'm like, the fuck? This is very complicated.
I was okay because I hated the con. So the problem. So before I get into my thoughts, before I get into my thoughts, I just want to finish the premise, which is the Grey King comes in and he's fucking up shit, and the city and Locke Lamora must deal with the Grey King and whatever is happening. That's the premise of the book. Congratulations, I finished it. The problem is the reason heist stories work is you start before the heist starts. You meet your characters. You learn about what the stakes are for the heist. You learn about the motivation. What if we do this heist? What is the thing? So by the time the heist actually starts and they start doing the thing, you're bonded to the characters, you're motivated, you know what the stakes are. Not so this book. This book wants you to sit through 6 hours of a fucking heist with characters you barely know, with stakes that don't exist. They're nothing. Because also, the first 6 hours, there's not even a moment of like, oh my god, could they get caught? The surety, cockiness, and arrogance by which they work through their stuff. You know, this author has no intention of this heist going badly for the first 6 hours. This whole time, you're just watching people be like, I'm so smart, being so smart. I hated it.
But see, I thought that so there's this whole parallel thing going back and forth where we go into childhood and we go back to adulthood and childhood and adulthood. And and it was relevant for the most part because what was happening in adulthood down the line a little bit after we started in the childhood part, it went back to the childhood part to explain something. And I thought it was fairly competent in those moments. And so I I definitely. Wait, hold on a second. I lost my train of thought. What were you were just saying? The
heist was very boring.
Yes, because he had failed as a kid in a couple of ways. I thought, oh, okay, so this will like also come up at some point, and then at another point, which we'll get to, there are these like FBI agents, and I was like, oh no, like they're caught already. How is this gonna work out? And then after that, it did. Yeah, I will admit. Came across.
That's the thing is, I was bored, and then there's this moment where the book pretends that the jig is up, that things are going to get complicated, that the tension I've been waiting for 3 hours for 3 hours at this point. It's like this, and then afterwards it was like, nah, it was them all the time. It was tis a ruse, my lord. And so, and the problem is. What Katie said is there throughout the entire book, it kind of goes back to the past. And I actually think the interludes about them as children work better in the later half than it does in the first half, because I found they were shorter, they were sweeter, and they connected in much more interesting ways in the later half. But the first half, you see Locke being an excellent little thiefer kid, but biting off more than he can chew. And like, as a child, he doesn't actually fail. He just doesn't have all the information. Like, he is shown as a competent planner from day dot. Like, I'm not like, wow, I got to watch him fail as a kid. No, I got to watch him be a smartass as a kid.
He was not competent as a child, Maria.
Yes, he was. He got all of his goals for the most part. He again, sometimes he didn't fully understand a situation, but his beginning intention he got. He just didn't understand consequences. So like, he always stole the thing he wanted to steal.
I would disagree with whether or not that is a success, but let's move on.
Then the actual plot starts, and then I think, oh, this one character that I actually quite like, and I'm really interested in getting integrated into the story, because something happens, and you're like, wow, what a breath of fresh air. This character is great. I'm so interested in them coming into the story, being utilized more, and then they disappear from the story. They get taken off in the wings, and anything that could have happened is gone, and they're fridged. The character's fridged for the benefit.
Wait, who are you talking about?
Nazca,
yeah.
Barsavi's daughter.
Yeah. Okay,
and
yeah.
You're interested. You're like, oh my god, I like this character. I want to see what happens. I want to see this like I want to see her grow up and become a gentleman bastard. This is so cool. I love this. And then no.
What was the point of showing her childhood and putting her there if she dies literally 5 seconds later?
So that when she's fridged, the emotional impact
what
is,
emotion?
Really.
Okay. So I've let the women do a lot of the talking because they're like my vanguard. They can get the unimportant things out of the way, and then my opinion.
Shut the fuck up.
I agree with almost everything Maria's saying. I'm gonna walk you guys through my opinion of how this book came to be. Initially, I was like, I'm gonna hate this. This is wish fulfillment banter. Masturbatory material on the part of the author. I just had that feeling going in, and a very trusted friend of mine called Lindbergh had said that Locke was the most annoying character ever, and I didn't find him the most annoying character ever because I don't even really think he's a character, which we'll get to. But initially, when this book starts as children, I liked that part. Initially, I found it annoying, and then I was like, okay, I kind of get what this book is doing. The tone of this book, which we'll talk about more, is everybody talks like the author. And I'm going to contrast it with the Locked Tomb trilogy, which I think does this well, and this book doesn't, in that the author is very present in both. But in this one, it actually kind of has a genericizing effect on the plot and the characters specifically. And I did like seeing Locke eat shit at the beginning. I was like, okay, that's fine. Maria's right that like he's basically eating shit for being too good, but like, okay, all right, fine. Then we skip to the present, and the thing is that I thought initially when this heist was being planned, I was like, oh, okay, he's really good he can write dialogue, he can write characters, this is going to be good. And then, again, this is where you start realizing, when it goes back to his hideout, how much of a mess this book is. The author is clearly very talented. Structurally, this book is a mess. Thematically, this book is a mess. Character-wise, this book is kind of a mess. He did not know what he was doing. So he sets up this very juicy, like there's a secret piece, and then there's this one guy that they'll call him Chains, who was the one who trained the Gentleman Bastards, which is a name that is so cringe. I thought for sure in book people were going to say like, oh, that's a silly name. No, in book everybody treats it straight. I hate it. Anyway, he sets up this very juicy idea that Chains has set up the Gentleman Bastards to break this peace, to secretly steal from the rich. And you're like, ooh, interesting. How's this going to work with the capo, whose plan is for this, the secret peace to hold? What implications are they going to hold for the city? And then we take a U-turn into, no, there's some guy out to kill the capo. And so we don't have, and we just spent a bunch of time setting up a plot where he's going to steal from a rich couple who are pretty likable. And then that won't come into play. It won't come into play again until almost the very last part of the book. And another place this book is structurally a mess is that, like, right towards the climax, after this deep inciting incident, we have an hour in the audiobook of a wardrobe heist. It's literally nothing. It's just him trying to steal some nice clothes, and it goes on for fucking ever, and I don't understand why it's there. It makes no sense. And then the end of this book tonally is very different than what came before, and it never plays with the themes, and that's why I think this book is messy.
Okay, so that's why I say nosedive. But it's so interesting that you guys didn't like the beginning. I thought the beginning, the very first, like, I would say 30 minutes of it, I was like, oh God, it's the woo, I'm smart. Like, what's to do? Back and forth, like Manic Pixie Dream Girl, but for a dude that wants to write clever dudes. And so I thought that's what it was. And then there were some storytelling elements, especially from Chains, but also, which is a character, but also some other stuff. And the thing is I liked that Locke was so overzealously overconfident that he fucked shit up. And he did fuck shit up. And that was fine, but then it doesn't go anything past that. Everything past that, Locke Lamora is a piece of cardboard. But that being said, I thought the beginning was interesting because of the world building aspect. That is what takes precedence almost over everything else. It's not about the characters, it's not about the plot. It's about what world are we in, which it takes too long to do, but I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I really liked some aspects to it, but then it started getting really convoluted because of the characters and because of the plot. And I feel like he stacked on like this really big thing onto something that should have been a small one single heist story. Also, it begins by saying that this really big heist they're going to do with this really nice couple who I think is good that they're likable and that they're being taken advantage of, but then they just like take a back seat and then they just never fucking show up.
That's the problem, is that you're kind of rooting for the couple at a couple points and then they disappear.
But I was hoping that would build up into a like, I was hoping there was, I don't know what, and I don't care what, but I was hoping there was going to be a complicated relationship between him acting the friend of the family, between him pretending to be black coat, FBI, same thing, FBI, and then like I was hoping there was going to be something else because the story had surprised me on a few accounts where I was like, okay, I'm ready to be surprised again. I'm ready for a third party to come into this or for something to go wrong where his crazy machinations are going to be turned on its head for a different reason. And it is, I guess, but not in any good way.
I'm going to say something really quick. The world building here is really cool. It's a really interesting world. There's some really cool details. And it's also a world that has women in positions of power and in like everyday positions. Like, from the beginning, women are thieves. From the beginning, there are women that are, most of the really cool alchemists that you hear about are women. There are a lot of, there's an entire, like, sport. The sharks, there's this sport of fighting these specific sharks on these, like, platforms in the ocean, and it's only women who do it. That's amazing. Why are they only 2 women that have significant roles in this book? That's it. There's only 2 women. There's only 2 women that have significant roles. There's so many men. There are so many garbage men. And not garbage, but there's just so many men. It's like this writer was like, I'm going to build a world where women actually have really cool places in society. And it's a much more egalitarian society than you'd expect. But guess what? We don't let women speak here except for an old lady in the last third / fourth.
Well, also that old lady sucks ass in the end. And also that old lady, okay, sorry, not literally, I mean what happens. Like, it like the change in character seems out of character to me in what she decides to do.
I'm going to say this. I would have liked this story if it was about the couple. Everything can happen the same way. I just like the couple way more than Locke.
Oh.
And Maria's right. there is a lot of like women who should, like, the author clearly can write women, he just doesn't seem to want to. Like, this book is such a sausage fest. And again, the one really interesting female character, she gets fridged after 2 scenes, and I'm like, I so was looking forward to reading about her. She's so cool. She's bitchy hot. I love this. And then she just...
And smart.
And she complimented Locke well and challenged him, and then nothing.
But it also built it up.
Yeah, and it builds up that, like, oh, this is going to be a thing, and then it's just like, no, she gets fridged. But it isn't even an effective fridging, because we don't have that much emotional attachment. We were more just excited to see her. The thing is that also one of the other ways this book is very messy is that it has a bunch of interludes to when they were children, like Maria was saying, and they mostly don't add anything. They're really long, and this is one of those things where I enjoyed them more than the plot that's going on now. But in terms of the function of the plot, they don't really have anything to do with anything. They felt like characterizing moments and world building moments that he wanted to include, but don't actually do anything. And, you know, again, the world building is really great, but, like, the interludes are not a great way to do it. There's a part where Locke, like, the chapter ends with that cliffhanger of, like, oh, maybe he's going to drown. And then we have literally 2 other viewpoints we flip to before we get back there, and one of them was an interlude that added nothing. There was no point to it. Like, the book is so stuffed with things that it doesn't need to be.
I really think it would have been significantly successful. Easy peasy. Drop adult Locke Lamora and just have childhood Locke Lamora, and not just Locke Lamora, also make him more interesting. But then, like, there was the setup for the child, for what's her face that gets fridged. There was the setup for the other late girl that he's in love with, and that's away. And then we just never even
That we never...
No, I know, but that's a whole other thing.
Children.
And then also, my favorite character out of everybody, or the closest besides the family anyway, is Chains, in my opinion. I like Chains. Chains a cool dude. He's a jolly fat dude. He's not a jolly fat dude. He's not Santa.
Who steals things.
Yeah, but I liked him. I liked him a lot, and I wanted, for when we cut to adulthood, if we did in this novel, which arguable, but I really would have preferred... actually, you know what? Wait, before I even say any of that, this is a series, correct? There's like 4 or 5 books or whatever. If that's the case, why is the whole first book not just about the children building up their relationship, so that way when they... Spoilers.
No adults want to read a story entirely about children. It would never happen. Like, just...
Teenagers, then. I would. Okay, incorrect. I fucking would, and if I would, somebody else would. So... Correction.
No, the publishing industry is not like...
I don't give a fuck about the publishing industry. I'm saying on a craft level.
I know, but from a point of view of, like, if we're thinking realistically of ways to fix the book, as much as I think that would have worked, it wouldn't have gotten published. They would have been like, you have to spice it with something juicier. It's the same thing you have in Name of the Wind, where, like, Rothfuss wanted to have childhood Kvothe, but couldn't have it as its own book. Thank God, because that was so boring. And had to do it the way he did. The other thing I want to say is there's a lot of different ways this book could have gone, and I think the one, because you could have had Nazca not die, spoilers, and not get fridged, and have that play out. In which case, I think the final battle being between her and the Grey King would have been excellent. Well, instead of Jean coming out, it's her, and that's how it ends. Beautiful. Anyway, but I think the one that is truly the most missed is going a bit of a Pirates of the Caribbean, where, especially if, to make the heist in the beginning worth it, is if Locke actually becomes fond of, and the Lucases, they're not the Lucases, what are they? The Salvaras, become, like, fond of him, to the point where once it comes out, there's a point where, like, there's that like misunderstanding period of everybody being mad at each other, but then they work together and they develop a partnership that kind of, you can see the ideas of it going into the future, where it's like, there's this con guy, and now there's these people in a position of power, but they know each other and they like each other, even though they work at odds with each other. They're friends, a la Will and Jack Sparrow in the first Pirates of the Caribbean. I thought that would have been a really cool way, and you could have had the plot function very similarly. You would have just had Sophia and Don Silvara get worked into the plot the whole time. The other thing is you just need to shorten the first 6 hours to 3 hours. The max you can have that heist get that much detail is 3 hours without it becoming, because like I literally was, if I had to read this book on my own, I would have not finished. I would have gotten to the 6 hours in, been, the plot hasn't started. I know the plot hasn't started because this is going too smoothly, and the tension I thought we were going to get has gone away. And so cut that to 3 hours. Rework the middle section so it involves the characters we spent the first 3 hours getting to know being involved more, and then clean up the ending. And it's just because Will is right. This guy is talented. I don't think this is an untalented writer, and I like I like the tone of the narrator itself. I just wish all the other characters didn't have the exact same tone. It would work if this book had the narrative voice of a cheeky guy who thinks the people that he's narrating about are kind of dumb and is judging them. But it only works if the characters are not all exactly the same. They all have the same voice. They all talk the same.
I thought his compatriots were actually all going to be like, it's like a love-hate relationship. I thought they were all going to fucking hate his guts when they grew up and stuff like that. I thought, I mean, even the title itself, The Lies of Locke Lamora, right? I'm thinking, oh, he's going to be somebody, and based off his, like, shitty little childhood self, I'm like, oh, so he's going to be a little shit, or he's going to be a little shit as he gets older, and become a big shit, and everyone's just going to fucking hate him, but then he's going to do something every now and again that earns the love back, and so it's like an abusive relationship, and I thought it was going to be an interesting back and forth with that, and then I would have enjoyed watching him eat shit after that.
Friend of the channel, Lindbergh, had the idea that once he becomes an adult, he should be a sociopath. And the thing about it is I actually think that would be very interesting. There is a startling lack of internality to him and the way he perceives the world. And that goes into the themes of the story. Like I said, the Grey King, who's the main antagonist, has nothing really to do with what the story initially says it's about and the tensions in the city, really. And, you know, there's one part where Locke is like, man, this must be what it's like to be on the other end of the con. This sucks because we just got tricked. Okay, now I'm never going to think about this again. Like, there's no processing of anything. I don't know why he does anything. At the end of the book, there's a lot of like, this is the way it has to be. And it's like, but why? Who are you? I think the author wanted to keep too much of Locke's backstory mysterious so it could be revealed later, for that to actually work, and it doesn't pair well with what he is as a child. So Zero Dragon Eye says, I would have the adult plot start immediately after Chains died, so it's their first con on their own.
That would be nice.
That's smarter, but
That's
that
way
doesn't
smarter.
work because I think later on he wants there to be like, ooh, what happened in between this time? What has Locke done in his secret past? Like, he wants him to be that kind of a figure, the Thorn of Emberlane, and so like that structurally hurts the book.
The other thing that I think he wanted was to imply that they've done a lot of stuff together to give the emotional background. This thing happens where Locke, there was a point where I said to Will, I just want this character to eat shit. And then he did in a very quick succession. He ate shit. But it doesn't work because he doesn't change anything about how he interacts with the world. Like, immediately doesn't change anything about how he interacts with the world. But to make him eating shit work, let me finish. To make him eating shit to make it work, you have to think him and his comrade at arms, him and his little gang of the Gentleman Bastards are the closest boys that have ever closed. You know, they're such a close crew. They're brothers. They're friends. They're a crew. The Gentleman Bastards were cleverer than smarter, or what is it? Richer and cleverer than everyone else. And there are even moments where they have like these chants and stuff they do before things that kind of work. But unfortunately, the other ones outside of Jean, who I like Jean as a character.
I like Jean.
Everyone likes Jean.
Everyone likes Jean. Jean's pretty cool.
Jean's a bro.
And the thing is, the reason Jean works is Jean gets a personality. Jean gets quirks.
Yeah.
Jean gets things, and you learn about him. Caldo and Galdo, they're good at playing cards. And
they're also
sassy.
twins who talk the same way. So I don't understand why I can't tell them apart.
I actually was literally about to write this down so I didn't forget it. So now that you've brought it up, can we just appreciate it just seems to be a constant that there's a buildup of characterization seemingly for a purpose to which then it suddenly disappears and then it never comes back and it's never used. And what I mean by that is, right, there is an absurdly large emphasis on the twins as children and how they're quirky and how they go back and forth and finish each other's sentences and then at the same time, and then that quality never comes back as an adult. Now I guess you could argue they grew out of it or something like that, but then why even bring it up and characterize them that way, and why even have, as Will just said, two of them if they're the same person?
You know what would have worked so much better if this was one of the problems they were having, is that they were at the point where the two of them had become their own people and they were growing apart and it was causing tension between the brothers. And like when they were young, they kind of lived off of being, but now they were developing their own unique likes, their own different things.
I would have liked one of them to be trans, just because I think it's always so interesting when one twin of a fraternity of like identical twins ends up being trans for some reason.
Also, wouldn't have been interesting. This is the other thing I was going to bring up, except for at large for the whole Gentleman Bastards. But then this would maybe even make more sense. That would be such an easy thing to have that split between the twins and everything. If one of the twins is like, guys, we are like rich. Why are we doing this? Why don't we invest our money? Because I'm sure like this world functions very business-like. So I'm sure there's like there's investments and stuff like that. So it would have been fascinating. Yeah, it would have been fascinating if one of the twins or any character, however you want to do it. But if one of the twins in this scenario is like, you know what, guys, I don't want to get caught. We're going to die one day. Just like maybe, that happened to somebody else. Or, it happens to tons of them, I'm sure. But he's like, at the end of every thief's career is a hangman's noose. So, I would, or no fingers, no hands. So he's like, I would like that. I would like to keep all that. So you know what? Peace out, guys. I'm going to the wealthy side of town and chilling and investing my good money. And that could be a source of like, resentment from the twin, from the group, from anything, or they could
Bug,
be.
Bug they were expecting there was a lot of pressure on Bug to be the replacement. The new fourth. There's a lot of ways, because even Bug, outside of he's young and he's reckless, the Bug doesn't have much of a personality either. Like the problem is outside of Jean and Locke Jean more so than Locke. I have a much clearer idea of who Jean is as a character, because young Locke is kind of initially like lacks a lot of emotion, but loves the machinations of a thiefering. But then adult Locke is like charming, full of emotion, like emoting in expected ways. Like there doesn't feel to be as much of a connection as there is between young Jean. Like I see young Jean turning into adult Jean easily. Young Locke to adult Locke? Man, I don't know who that is.
Well, also young, again, besides the fact that Locke doesn't really have too much of a personality, Locke also is like, as a kid, he's just dumb. I mean, he's not actually smart. He doesn't seem smart in any given moment. Is it just me? Like, when he speaks, he doesn't seem smart. When he acts, he doesn't seem smart. We're told he's smart. We're told he's clever. We're told he did these things as a kid. But we don't see him problem solving in those moments. So it doesn't feel naturally smart in any of those moments. And so it's like this dumb, lucky kid turns into this like Romeo of the thieving gentleman world.
It's a problem where the book wants to have a genius character, but the author isn't a genius enough to write them. This book has 3 of my least favorite tropes, which are twins who pretend to be part of one person. I don't understand. No twin in real life is like this. No twin pair in real life is like, we talk in order like this. Like, that's not a thing. It fridges women, which I think is like the greatest crime, because it means we don't get to have any female characters, and as torture is effective at the end, which is annoying. But we should jump into the plot before we go too much farther.
Yes. I was just gonna say.
Also, you may have seen earlier, I clicked on a comment to show it on screen, and that is because this is a Patreon live stream for our book club. People in the chat, there's 14 people here. They like to have conversations. Sometimes we shine a light on their comments. We don't always. I'm always reading them on the side, but when they have an interesting thought, I bring them up. I show it to the world, and I say, I, as a cult leader, have allowed you to shine for a brief moment. Now go back into the dark. We have a Patreon. Come join if you want to meet cool, sexy people in our Discord, if you want to be part of a cool book club, or if you want to get access to Patreon exclusive critique streams where me and Katie look at the micro of prose and how those work to build a scene. I don't remember what scene we did. Oh no, last week we compared a good sex scene to a bad sex scene. The one from Uprooted to the one in Bride, and it's nodding
that was
problems.
fun.
It was quite a good one. But Maria, why don't you start us off with The Lies of Locke Lamora?
Don't say that. You have to cut that out. You absolutely hobo. Oh my god. So let's get this started, shall we? This book opens at this cemetery, that has a labyrinth underneath it, where this guy named the Thief Maker, he gets children. This guy also talks like Jack Sparrow, but if Jack Sparrow was a skinny, creepy old man. The audiobook narrator is doing a specific voice, and it sounds like Jack Sparrow. And he even says "savvy" several times.
Later in his life, Jack Sparrow, a.k.a. played by later in his life. I was hoping I'd remember his name by the end of this sentence, which
Johnny
is why...
Depp.
Johnny Depp. Yeah, this is Jack Sparrow as played by older Johnny Depp.
But his entire life is he was a thief. But he got all of his fingers broken, so he can't do that no more. So now he goes and he finds orphans, and he teaches them how to be thieves, and then he sells his little thieves to the thief gangs. There's so many thief gangs in this city. I don't know how there's enough people for them to steal from and rob. It's insane. But anyway, he sells his little thiefies to whoever he wants. And the start of this book is him talking to this blind priest guy, priest of Perilandro, who is blind and has chains, and thus is called Chains. And he's like, I got a kid for you. You'll love him. I'll give it to you on a discount. And Chains is like, why would I want something you want to discount? And he's like, you don't understand. I've had a hard time. And basically you learn that there was a plague and a bunch of orphans were brought in. Stop it with your cold ass nose. Leave me alone. But there was a plague, and he got a bunch of orphans off of, it was the Catchfire plague. And he got a bunch of orphans from that. And one of them wasn't even an orphan from this particular plague. He just snuck in. This young, skinny runt of a kid was like, I'm gonna become a thief.
Yeah, let me go with all these other kids to a sketch-ass place.
To this guy who's like, follow me, my pretties, don't worry, we'll feed you soon. But anyway, and he goes, and the guy's like, you chose to come. I didn't purchase you. You came for free, kid. And he's like, oh, I just have been surviving and doing stuff. Also, I stole this. And the little kid shows a half crown he stole from one of the Yellow Jackets, which is the city guard, which is against the secret peace. You don't steal from nobles, and you don't steal from the guards. Otherwise, you literally risk the secret peace that this entire city is based off of. So the thief maker is like, God damn it. He has to go back, explain the situation, give the guy his coin back.
Doesn't just give the coin back. He
also pays him more.
On. Yeah.
And he comes back and he's like, listen, Locke, named after your father, Lamora, you need to get your shit together, buddy. We gotta be cautious here. Locke loves thieving. As they learn how to thief, he does it, but he does it with a flair. He doesn't just, help distract other people who are doing the thieving. He puts on performances.
Okay, look, Locke Lamora also just, is very extra. He doesn't pretend to throw up to distract people. He instead takes orange rinds and makes a vomit-esque liquid in his
slurry.
Mouth by slurry, yeah. And throws it up. So, he's so over the top that he becomes a liability.
And he also has just done a lot of things. He's had a lot of problems. There was one time where he starts he does a thing to try break into this one tavern to steal the money people had on the tables, but ends up causing a plague quarantine, and a fire starts out, and it's a really big problem. And the thief maker's just like, ah, God, this kid's annoying. And then at the end of the last straw is there's this one kid who was annoying Locke. It was an older boy who kept taking his steals and stuff like that. And Locke is like, I wanna get this guy punished. So he pretends that the guy stole from the Yellow Jackets, and then the kid gets killed.
Is it just me, or was it inferred that this older kid was also like sexually harassing them? Because there's this two-parter. There's a two-parter part where at the beginning, he kind of like stutters over something, and then he begins again by like continuing saying it got worse, the bullying got worse. But the way he says it and the way it's expressed makes it seem very like something he does not want to talk about, but he's just talked about killing and all this stuff. So it seems very like maybe he was being sexually harassed as well.
I for a moment thought that, but then I thought it was just like the kid was just beating them up extra like viciously and unnecessarily. I don't know.
Maybe.
He doesn't mean to get the kid killed, and he ends up getting a second kid killed as well, because he doesn't think into the ramifications of what he's doing, and he doesn't understand how big of a deal it is to steal something from a Yellow Jacket. The two kids get killed. Eventually, the thief maker realizes that Locke was the person who orchestrated the whole thing that got the kids in trouble, and he's like, oh, I can't let anyone else find out that this happened on my watch. I have to kill this kid or sell him. And he even goes to Kappa Barsavi and gets like, because you have to pay to kill one of your wards, I guess, and he goes to Kappa Barsavi, explains the information, and you get a death mark, which is his tooth, that says you can kill this person without, getting punished for it. And so he sells Locke to Chains, and Chains is like, we'll see about if we can do something about this young Lamora boy. And basically, you learn that Chains is not a priest of the god Paralandro. There are 12 gods in this, and the secret 13th god, the Crooked Warden.
Which, can we just say that's so lame? Can we? I know it's not like it doesn't have to be a big thing. It's fine. But it's not very fresh. Like, I'm like, oh boy, unlucky number 13. That's the one of thieves we don't talk about. I don't know. I just thought it was a little uncreative.
Yeah, it is a little bit. I mean, it's kind of cool to have the idea of like the thief god. And again, the world building in general in this book is very good. Like something Maria didn't mention is that like the city is built out of like this glass made by some ancient race, and they don't even know why. It's just I was going to bring that up too.
Yeah, the Eldrin.
Friend of the channel, Lindbergh says, Oliver Twist, if Oliver was the most special word that is more acceptable in other English dialects than here to ever live, I'm back, people. All right, good to know.
Yeah.
It is kind of like one of these things where like Locke as a kid, it's almost... A lot of the thieving kind of stuff in this book is better than it was in Six of Crows, but it's not great. And that's kind of how I graded it, is like, it's better than other books that do this, but it's not great.
I thought the whole scheme going on with the couple, the Don and the Danya, and the whole Brandy thing, I thought that was clever as fuck. I liked hearing the...
It's a Nigerian prince.
I liked it. I don't care what you thought. I liked it, and I thought it was fascinating to hear the logistics of him making up this shit to say, oh, Don, my family, that's made up, Brandy, blah, 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 vineyards, blah, blah, blah. I really liked how much information I was getting. Some people might not like the exposition dump in that way, but I thought it was really cool, and I thought it made him feel smart. Now, whether or not that was in tune with Locke, I wasn't thinking at the time. All I was enjoying the back and forth of this business arrangement, and I'm like, and then also the follow-up of them pretending to be FBI equivalent and being like, oh, by the way, those people you just spoke to, aka me, on the DL, those people you just spoke to, they're thieves. We need your help. So I'm like, where is this going to go? Why did you do that? I thought there's going to be a good reason why you did that, but there isn't. And so that's what's unfortunate. But that was my exclusively alone, besides the rug story. That was my favorite part reading. It was the most enjoyable part for me. Anyway.
He does make exposition in that part actually very interesting. It's one of the better parts because you're getting both world building and plot moving forward at the same time. Basically, going back to when they were kids, Chains is like, okay, he's so special, but I guess I can train him up to be one of my gentlemen bastards. And then he talks to Locke and is like, "This is how you fucked up, kid. I'm going to give you the death mark around your neck, so you're always going to know you're a moment away from death. Also, this 13th god demands that when someone dies, you have to steal something for them, and I'm going to make you steal a bunch of money."
You have to give the money away to the god, no matter what the amount is, and it has to be commensurate with the worth of whatever the thing is.
And Locke is like, "But that's going to take me 10 years to do."
Like that. Exactly in that tone of voice.
And Chains is like, "Yeah, I know." That's the punishment.
I did like that concept. I didn't understand the reasoning behind it because I'm like, oh, okay, so you're gonna, because you're supposed to throw it as a sacrifice into the ocean, which is fine, and that could be a cultural thing and everything. But can you guys quit it? Anyway, sorry. I liked the concept, and I thought it was gonna do something more with that of teaching Locke an attempt at empathy, because at this moment, Chains is like, you murdered them. You maybe not by your hand, but you killed them, and they are your victims. I loved it when he said that.
Not just the two, all the kids that knew about this one part, like 8 other kids, basically 10 kids end up dying because of Locke being dumb. And I like the idea of the death offering, and I do wish it because it's supposed to be, when you do a death offering, you steal something that you do not benefit from, but it is for the benefit of the other people that are gone. And so I like the idea of it. I also like the idea if he had learned empathy for like what he had done and was like a more cautious person because of it. Unfortunately,
yeah,
that's not the purpose of this. The purpose of the setting up the death offering here is not to make Locke a better person. It is to set up a really big death offering at the end of the book. That's it.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
I think that it functions on a few different levels in terms of world building and then payoff later, but I didn't care about the payoff later. But yeah, and so then Chains is basically, and I kind of feel like this is just where all the kid flashbacks should end it. Again, I actually kind of enjoyed them at times. But like this is the last one that's actually necessary. And so then we skip forward in time, and yeah, Locke is running a Nigerian prince scam. There's actually a specific scam after a horse that's kind of named a similar thing, where it's. But anyway, where he's like, I'm part of he's like, oh no, I'm getting attacked by bandits, help me. And the husband of the cool merchant pair shows up and saves him. And then he's like, I want to do business here in the city. We have the most exclusive wine of all the wines, and we think it's going to be destroyed. So we need somebody to take all of our money, but you'll need to put some money in first. And the merchant guy is like, okay, I could earn money. That's cool. Nobody steals from us, so I'm not going to check this out anyway. I'm just going to take your word for it. I'm not going to, figure out what's going on. And, again, the dialogue during this part is actually quite good. The interaction between the characters is quite good. You're not supposed to be in Locke's head yet, so you're like, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting.
Also, what's interesting is that later on, you learn that the Danya, the wife, has a relationship with a very powerful figure. And it now occurs to me that we're speaking with that point you just made. Why wouldn't the Danya have gone to the powerful figure to confirm the story where her husband's about to lose half his money on a gamble in order to gather information on the other country to see if this is a good gamble to make? Why make it? Anyway, continue.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
So the one thing I will say to that is all she knows is that this lady can put she doesn't know she's a powerful figure. She just knows that this lady knows people that she can get things in terms with. And she eventually does do that. The fact that it doesn't happen sooner, no idea. But anyway, so this con is kind of unraveling. We have the first meetup, and while this stuff is happening for this initial part of the con, there's a big gray shadow that keeps flying overhead that nobody is fucking noticing.
Except for you.
And you're like, what is that? Hark, is that the plot? I hear. Yes, it is.
Swooping above us.
That's the thing, is that this part in the book is, and it doesn't seem like it. It seems like this is kicking off the heist plot that the book is going to be about.
Yes.
Because that's how far into the book we are, structurally speaking. Like I said, certain things happen at certain percentages in stories, almost pretty consistently in modern storytelling, in Western storytelling. But no, this is actually the heist that happens in the first 5 minutes of the movie to show that the main characters are competent. And the problem is it lasts way too long and it comes too late.
And it goes forever, and we get multiple scenes. And then there's this point, there's this point where Locke's like, he's given them I'm a Nigerian prince who can't get to their money, but if you give me money, I can get to my money, and then I'll give you more money than you could have dreamed of plot, all having to do with brandy. The Salvaras are in. Hook, line, and sinker. They believe
Don and
it.
Danya.
Yeah. They are, that's their titles. They are in on the plan, so much so they signed the contract. They've already given him like 5,000 crowns, which is a ton of money, and they're ready to go. And then you have a scene where the Don goes home and he's like, let me go to my office. And in his office, there are two men, all in black, that are like, Don Salvara, you've been taken in. Don't look for your man, Conte. He is indisposed at the moment, but don't worry, you're safe. We are, and they flip open this thing, and it's like, it's the Duke's secret police.
The FBI.
FBI. You just need to think of them as if they're the FBI. And they're like, you are being taken in by the Thorn of Camor. And they're like, the Thorn of Camor is a myth. What are you talking about? And it was like, no, Lucas Fairwhite, the man you know that you rescued, he wasn't, you didn't actually rescue him. Those are two of his other associates. It was all a ruse, and you've been taken in. And the thing is, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And
I also think it is too, unless there was a greater purpose to it, which I assumed there would be, and there wasn't. Also, side note, before this, when they do make the deal, they're on a barge, and they're basically like, there's this. I just want to point this out because this is really cool. There's the whole scene of them making the deal, and Locke in his pretend, as you say, Nigerian prince formation, sells the sob story of his woes. We're in the middle of like this really big open marina, and they have like these like death games going on where people are just basically being killed by the devilfish, the shark thing. And it is actually a really great scene because we have, I had so much hope for this book in this scene. It's because I'm like, okay, I'm getting a cool back and forth between two characters I really, really, really like. One character I'm lukewarm on, but I'm ready to be persuaded. A story that's really complicated, almost overly so, but I'm okay. Let's see what happens. And then you have these hot, ripped women killing sharks. By running back and like, it was such a stellar scene. I saw every moment of it. I smelled it. The paint of the scene. One thing I have to say this author can do really well is paint a scene. However, I really wish he could connect them better.
It's the connective tissue of this that really works. We got some, like, it's just, the structure is a mess. But anyway, so the night guards are like, oh yeah, you've been taken in. It's all a ruse, and you haven't heard about it because everybody's too ashamed. You know, this person, she lost 10,000 crowns, and this person 25,000. And Lucas, Don Salvara is like, oh my god, what do I do? He already has my money, and the guy's like, give him everything. Our operation is drawing in close on him, and we can't let him know you're spooked. So anything he asks for, you just give him. And it's like, he was already going to do that. He was bought in.
Weird.
They had to convince him.
I thought they were going to double up on the scam and steal the rest of his fortune away from him on the other half of the scam. I didn't know how, but I thought that was the purpose of it. And then I was like, what? Like, as it continued and just like fizzled out. And I was like, what? You did so much buildup for this con, and then you did nothing with it.
Yeah, Maria's right. This is maybe the most annoying thing because you think it's like going to be a nice, like, ooh, okay, now we got some counter moves against Locke's gang. The tension is rising, and then fucking no, it's just Locke pretending to be the Midnight Police, secret police, and you're like, but again, why? He was giving you all your money. Like, why did you need to add in this element of like reveal? It feels like it's trying to be too clever.
The problem is, it is what tips off Sophia Salvara to be like, I need to look into this. I'd like to talk again with the secret police. Let's see if I can get someone to put me in. And so it's like, you literally played your hand in the worst way, because if it, like, and the thing is, Katie's right, is if this had then become Don Salvara versus Locke as Lucas Fairwhite, like having these scenes, having to organize, having to plan stuff, and like working against each other, where suddenly Don Salvara is doing the same thing Locke is doing. They're both pretending and they're both machinating, and then at a certain point they have to work together because something else has gone wrong, and maybe Sophia's been taken, and now they have to work together and they have to use the skills they've learned to get. That would have been awesome.
That's what I thought was going to happen.
No. And you know it's not going to happen because immediately you find out it was actually Locke the whole time in a mustache. And I was so frustrated. I was in an airport at this point, and I just was like, I hate this. I don't even want to continue reading. At so many points I went, I don't want to continue reading, despite the fact that there are parts of this book that are good. I don't know how Scott Lynch managed to do this. It is honestly confounding. But anyway, so then like they do that. And then they have a couple other scenes where they're doing the plot, blah, blah, blah. You're going back to when they were kids and they're learning how to cook.
By the way, from here on out, I lost interest. After that, after it started switching, well, that's not true. I lied. I'll tell you when I lost interest. It's coming up, though. Continue.
Kappa Barsavi's pissed, and he has summoned Locke. A thing that they have to do in as a thief gang is they need to pay their tithe and their taxes to Kappa Barsavi. Now they pretend nobody knows they have 45,000 crowns. They have more money than the guy they're currently stealing from. Their fortune is literally greater than Don Salvara's.
Why are they stealing things?
For the love of the game, Katie. For the love of the fucking game.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. Wouldn't that have been a nice bit of tension if everybody else wanted to retire but him?
Yes, that would have been great. We have enough money. We don't need to continue doing this. But anyway, they have to pretend to steal stuff where they literally go to thrift stores or what are those places? Like they just go and they buy shit like silver, a lady's perfume, just garbage stuff like that, and then they go to a pawnbroker and they like sell it. And this is where you understand one of the problems that Scott Lynch has in this book. And I think it was Chris M. Made this point in their final thoughts, which is the pawnbroker scene is indicative of everything wrong in this book. We get a scene where we're described a pawn shop, the pawnbroker, and we get negotiations for every single fucking item they have brought in, where you learn what the item is. How am I supposed to sell this? I'll offer you this much. No, it's clearly worth this much. Blah, blah, blah. Does the pawnbroker come back again? Do they visit him later when they need money or clothing? No. They don't. Do any of the items that they're haggling about at this pawn shop matter? No. It is a long, extended scene of garbage.
Nothing.
It gives you nothing as a kid. Tells you nothing about John. It would have even been interesting if maybe Locke is a bad haggler and Jean, the giant muscly dude, is actually the best haggler and he's the one that had to do it.
Wait a second, but that would make sense. John is smarter when it comes to numbers.
Listen, there's so many ways where you can make scenes like that work, but no, it tells you nothing. It gives you nothing. It's just a long, tedious scene that does nothing in the plot.
I actually forgot that it existed. Like, I do not remember that scene at all because it's so pointless.
The only reason I remember it is because Chris M. in the final thoughts mentioned how it is 100%. I got to the scene and I was like, oh, buddy, is this everything that we're spending too much time? The author doesn't know what to give time to and what not to give time to.
Yeah.
Everything gets a lot of time, whether it deserves it or not. This is perfect. Anyway, they take the money from this little pawn experience and they go to Kappa Barsavi and he's like, oh, you have less time this week. And he was like, well, it was raining a lot and it's hard to steal stuff when you have to deal with the rain, Kappa Barsavi. And Kappa Barsavi's like, oh, Locke Lamora, I know you're honest because some weeks you bring me not a lot of money and some people, they just bring the same amount every time and they think I'm not dumb. And I'm like, but
where's the logic between that? I know, this is the same thing. I'm just like, bro.
I don't know how to tell you this, but or dumb. But anyway, and then the cop is real pissed because one of his best like generals has been killed, and he's torturing the gang that this general was part of. Like, what happened? And they're like, we don't know, we can't remember, we don't remember anything. And like, he's torturing this one guy, and this other guy's like, please, he doesn't know, I swear, none of us know. And I'm immediately like, oh, so it's magic, mind, memory wiping. And Kappa Barsavi's like, you're all traitors, and then just brutally kills all of them.
Okay, but wait, pause. Now, in this moment, I bought this only because of one reason, and that is because his daughter, the character that gets fridged, prior to this says, my father's off his rocker. There's something wrong with him. And so I believed it in that moment.
Before they go in, Nazca, who had in the interlude they'd met when she was a kid and had spiked shoes and liked to order people around, and Locke had like sworn himself to her immediately, and she's portrayed as like, oh, okay, she's gonna be his heir, even though his sons aren't gonna love that. And like beforehand, she'd be like, dude, my dad is being weird. Just say yes for now. We'll figure it out later. And you're like, they have such good chemistry, and I don't even mean romantically, just like as characters, they're like they have the scene really sparkles. Like Edward Cullen in The Sun, and you're like, okay, this is going to be such an interesting relationship to explore and character to interact with. She's one of the few characters who actually feels distinctive, which I'll talk about after Maria makes her point.
Immediately, very distinctive. And I less a point than just finishing the scene so we can talk about the thing. When the Kappa finally talks to them, he's like, yo, Locke, I need your help. Shit's wild. I'd like you and my daughter, you pledged yourself to her when you met her the first time. Come on, buddy. I'd like you to court her. You have my permission. And Locke's like, Papa say what? Like, but Nazca told him he's gonna ask you something weird, and I just need you to agree. It won't happen. Trust me, buddy. And so you're like, oh, this is what she's talking about. And he was like, okay, I'll court your daughter. And he's like, imagine he's like, my daughter won't be, I can't make my daughter my heir because her brothers wouldn't stand for it and it would cause problems in the family. But if you marry in, you're one of my most trusted people. You're super smart. You and her will become a power couple that will help even out her brothers. So it's a win-win, Locke, my boy. And Locke's like, okay, I agreed to try court her, and I'll be back in a few days. And Nazca's like, yeah, I know, it's wild, but like, we'll figure out a plan. I don't want to marry you, so like, don't worry about it, but like, we just have to figure this out. And immediately I'm like, oh, is she gonna become like a gentleman bastard? Is something gonna happen? She's gonna get really close, and then she becomes part of the gang. And it just becomes like this buddy story, and then integrating a new person in. And also she's just great, and I love it. And obviously this Grey King that keeps killing the Kappa's men is something they're going to have to fight against. Oh, I love this. This is so cool. And then they leave. And they do other stuff.
And all of 10 seconds later, she dies.
Yes. They literally before Locke can even be like, how am I going to pretend to court her? You find out she's dead. She's dead. The Grey King. Oh, before you find out she's dead, Locke's out doing something one night. He had a meeting with the Salvaras, who are once again giving him money because the special police told them to, and he gets lost on his way home. His mind gets befuddled, and he gets lost on the way, and he gets taken in, and it's the Grey King, and the Grey King's like, hello, Locke Lamora. I know about your stuff. I know everything you've been doing. I know about your gentleman bastards and the 45,000 crowns you have in your vault beneath the Temple of Peller. Oh God, I said this.
By the way, the Grey King has just been mentioned before this as the reason that Don, whatever his name, is hiding in his like
Kappa
little
Barsavi.
lair, unwilling to go out. And you're like, okay. At first I was like, oh, the Grey King's going to be Locke, and I'm going to hate this. And that's actually not the case, which was nice. But it is still pretty lame who he actually ends up being. Also, Zira said, I don't think Scott Lynch has actually interacted with anyone who has ever committed a crime, which is why he had thieves buy things when the whole point it is they are thieves. Also, if they're buying from a pawn shop, people might know that they're buying these things from a pawn shop. They should just have Bug be like, okay, Bug, now you can run the big crimes with us. Up till this point, you were just providing the items for cover. So
far, they've been ever so clever. That's a really good point to make. Why would they themselves be seen doing this prior to doing this other thing? Anyway, wait, so I never actually ended up getting to the end because I
We'll
ran
get
out
there.
of time. I want to know who the I didn't get to get that revealed to
Don't
me.
worry, we'll get there. We'll get there. But yeah, so then the Grey King's like, I need you to do something for me, and you have to do it. Otherwise, I will let Kappa Barsavi and the Duke know that you have been breaking the secret peace the whole time, and you're not just second-story thieves fucking around and stealing garbage shit. You're actually conning everyone and breaking the peace, and the entire city's blah blah blah. Kappa Barsavi will kill you if he ever finds out. And Locke's like, oh god, oh my god. Yeah, that's very true. And then my friends, my friendly boys. And also the Grey King has this guy with a falcon, and the falcon's got like weird talons. And at one point, like, Locke is being sassy, and then you realize that this is a falcon, a scorpion falcon. It is a crossbreed made by the bonds mages of Carthage that are they make animal hybrids, and this is a scorpion falcon that could kill him with one prick. And also the reason that knives can't touch the Grey King, and there's all this stuff about him, is because he has a bonds mage. And the thing about bonds mages is they're wildly expensive. Like, having a really good one per day is 1,000 crowns. Like, it is an insane amount of money. And this guy's just had him for ages. Like, this bonds mage has been doing stuff for a while. And basically the Grey King's like, hey, I need you to go to a meeting. I'm setting up a meeting with Kappa Barsavi, and I need you to go and pretend to be me during this meeting.
He has other things to be doing at the time as his excuse for why Locke needs to be going in and impersonating him. This is like the dumbest plot. There's parts of this book that are actually remarkably dumb, and this is one of them.
So it's ironic you say that, because I was waiting for Maria to finish. This is the point in which my attention was lost. With this added level of complication, I did not find that to be effectively introduced, nor was I interested in it, because the other thing that felt way more like the narration, the exposition was way more attentive towards, which was the previous scam that's going on. And then we also, by the way, in addition to that, as we've already said, he has an issue with this, the guy, the marriage, the whole everything. That's already a lot. To add yet another thing on top of that right now without finishing any of the other ties, I've seen like one person do that so far in their what's the word I'm looking, in their draft. It's not published. I've seen one person in a draft start to do that successfully, where you have those many variables like all at once with somebody struggling with it. But that is really hard, and it's not overly interesting, because then you don't have enough time to actually focus on one of the problems and get invested in it. So when that got introduced, I was like, oh, come on. I legitimately thought they were going to go to this other country and then they were going to steal. I thought for a hot second they were going to use the Don's, the resources, to literally actually steal liquor and then make off with the liquor, blame the Don on his ships and stuff, and triple whammy him from like, I don't know, from this weird like FBI standpoint to I'm this guy who needs this help to now this guy just got left with all of the fault. I thought that was literally, once again, going to be the whole story. So when this third element got introduced, I was uninterested.
I knew the whole time the
for
con
you.
wasn't the plot. Like, but my point is, that's why I hated the beginning, because I knew this wasn't the plot. I 100% knew that wasn't the plot. I thought the plot was going to be Grey King plus Nazca getting involved. Nope, just kidding. So yeah, the Grey King's like, I need you to impersonate me, and also I'm going to be the only one there, but the Kappa Barsavi can bring whoever he wants, and our boy Locke is like, but how will I not do the dying? And he's like, oh, don't worry, my bonds mage will magic you so that you can't be hurt, or like nothing can stab you, or no arrows will hurt you and all that jazz. So don't worry, you'll be fine. And Locke's like, oh god, I gotta do this. And again, just buys that I have to be somewhere else, so I can't go to this very important meeting of negotiations. Bye, guys. And so, like, then Locke immediately finds out that Nazca was killed. She was killed by Scorpion Falcon, and then brought to Barsavi in a barrel of horse pee.
Which was so weird. Like, why? It feels so over the top for the sake of author's hand being shown to make you, the reader, angry. But I couldn't care less at this point. It's because I haven't been given enough of a reason to care.
Yeah, that's why this is not an effective fridging. We don't actually have that much emotional attachment to Nazca. We were mostly just like, oh, she's going to be a cool character to interact with.
Yes.
And so this is one of the places where I guess this is a good time to talk about it. All the characters in this book talk the same way. The audiobook does a pretty good job at giving them, some of them, a fake Italian accent. But they all have like the same kind of jokes, and they all have kind of the same kind of humor overall. Towards the end of the book, some of the characters become more distinctive. There's like an old doddering dog leech, they call him, which is like an underground doctor, who's like a little bit different. John actually starts acting like a different person towards the end of the book, and he becomes more distinctive. But Locke especially kind of is very everyman-ish in the way that he talks like all the other characters, which is one of the reasons he's not that distinctive. The twins are like just the most bland of characters. And a lot of this comes from the fact that Lynch has one way he likes to write dialogue and wit, and he's not bad at it. It's good stuff if it was paced better and more distinctive. The problem is everything is like this, so it kind of just becomes noise. Another author with a very similar strong writerly tone that comes through their writing is Tamsin Muir in the Gideon the Ninth Locked Tomb series. And the difference is that her characters are strikingly distinctive. They're very different from each other. Part of this is just that actually they're different ages and genders. And actually this book later on, when it has an old lady character, she's very distinctive just by virtue of being an old lady character and having slightly different way of talking. But even within Tamsin Muir's characters, like the first novel has so many different pairs of necromancers and chevaliers. Not called that, they're called Cavaliers. And like I still 2 years later kind of remember a lot of them. And they're funny in different ways. Like there's the stuffy old necromancer who's like, you guys in the ninth aren't even a real house. You mean he had a very weird way of talking. Ianthe, the golden one, is like, oh, blah, 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 blah. Part of it is that the narrator does a very good job giving them actual auditory different voices.
They're also very unique and characteristic, like you were saying before, altering age groups, which inherently, by nature of it being a different time in life, will automatically characterize them differently. So by using those inherent the inherent nature of those tools, like it's easy to control in that type of way. Whereas they're all around the same age.
And the thing is, like, you know, their humor is informed by who they are. So Jod, the God Emperor Necromonger Prime, like he has a very unassuming way of making jokes that are kind of funny. He has a little bit of cool dad-itis at times. He's very understated. And so like that informs there is a similar DNA in all of her banter and dialogue, but it's very kind of more distinctive to who the characters are. It's like this book is like Liza Locke Lamora, everybody is a Doberman. But in the Locked Tomb trilogy, everybody is a dog, but they're different kinds of dogs and they look very distinct.
And that's a fantastic way to look at it, Will, and honestly, especially because Tamsin Muir as a writer, her narration has such a distinctive voice in a way where I thought it was unique to the Locked Tomb series, and then we read that other book of hers. We read another book of hers that is a completely different setting, and it the same narrative voice. So, but despite that, her characters are very distinct, and that's a huge problem you have here. Anyway, Locke gets this mission. We find out Nazca's death. Oh, the other point I was going to make about Nazca's death. The reason they had to make it so disgusting was because that's the only way to elicit a reaction from the reader over a character we do not know or care about. So that's why she had to be thrown into a barrel of horse piss. Because it is so disgusting, so visceral. Like, I was disgusted, grossed out in that moment.
That's a lot of horse piss. I'm sorry, that just is occurring to me that, like...
Have you ever seen horses pee?
Yes,
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's like a gallon.
That's true. That is true.
Anyway, so Locke finds out about this, and Barsavi's like, "Oh, Locke, I want you at my side because I'm gonna bring I can bring in 100 men with me, or however much as I want, and I'm bringing all the brawlers, everyone I know. We're gonna fucking kill this guy." And then Locke's like, there's all those rumors about how like weapons can't touch him. What if he's like a bonds mage and like it's actually true? And he's like, Barsavi's like, "Well, we'll try anyway, buddy, but I want you there with me." And Locke's like, "I can't get out of this, so I'm gonna have to get out of it later." "Sure, Barsavi, I'll be there." And then he goes back and he tells the crew the whole story, and they're like, we need to leave, like now. We need to pack up and we need to go.
Understandably so.
Understandably so. And I think they should have at least tried this and then had the Falconer, that's the Bond mage, like catch them and be like, Lamora, you can't get out of it because I've been tracking you this whole time and nobody noticed. But Locke's like, no, we can get out of this. Don't worry. Once we do this, we'll be fine. And like, he's like, we'll just do the things, blah, blah, blah. And they decide Bug's gonna hang out in this one place and Jean is gonna like be underneath, and Locke gets the stuff. There's also a scene he has with the Bond mage where he learns that the Bond mage can do magic around names, where he can take people's true names and force them to do things. And he lets the reader know that Lamora is just thrown Theron for shadows. So it's not, the implication is that's not Locke's actual last name. And then he's like, but your first name will do it. And he's like, oh, perhaps I'll torture your friends. And Locke's like, no, anyone but my friends. Don't hurt my friends.
Because it really shows that he loves them so much based off the actions he's made.
The scene happens, and like Locke is dressed up as the Grey King. Yes, he's created a voice, and the Kappa Barsavi is like, oh, release the arrows. And none of the arrows hit Locke. And Locke's like, okay, I've got the magic of the Falconer. He's protecting me. And then Kappa Barsavi gets this guy named Eamon, and he's like, Eamon, go. And this guy just walks up and like goes to touch him, and Locke knows the myth that if you touch the Grey King, you'll die because of the Bonds mage. And so he's like, no, don't do it, you'll die, you fool. And he's trying to like pretend to be evil, but also try to save this guy's life. And then the guy touches him and nothing happens. And they realize, oh, he can't be stabbed or slashed, but you can just fuck him up. So then they just beat the shit out of him, throw him into a barrel, and like so they throw him into a barrel of horse piss, and then they shove him through a trap door that leads into the ocean. And at this point, I remember saying to Will, I just want this character to eat shit. And Will was like, I don't know if it's going to happen. And I was like, he just got thrown into a barrel of horse piss, so I'm hopeful.
Wait, that wasn't enough shit eating for you?
It's not enough.
Here's the reason it's not actually good shit eating. It has fucking nothing to do with Locke's faults or hubris.
Yep.
And this also makes no fucking sense because it's so stupid that Locke didn't think that, okay, I'm going to take the fall for this guy. Like, really, the reason he bought was, I have something else in the city I have to be doing at that time period, so I need you to impersonate me. Dumbest fucking thing in the world. He should have seen this coming. He's just holding the idiot ball. It's so dumb. And so there's a point later where there's a character who does like a lot of scheming, and she jabs some poison in Locke and is like, oh, now you have to do what I say or I won't give you the antidote. And then he like talks with her for a minute and then punches her and takes the antidote. And that, because he's like, you didn't really expect I was going to do that. You've been playing this game too long. That was funny and a good subversion, because you can buy like, oh yeah, she does just get kind of too caught up in this cloak and daggers thing and forgets the straightforward approach. That would have been a good thing that if that had happened to Locke, where like, oh no, you tried to think too much around this, you tried to play the game too much and manipulate all the strings, and you forgot the strings can just break. But this is not that. This is him just being an idiot.
Yep.
And like not knowing a very basic thing about double crosses.
And in a way that, and it's because Will's completely correct. It's not a satisfying eating of shit. Locke is brought down, and he claims it's because of his hubris. But it doesn't feel like that, because you don't feel like Locke should have believed this. It just feels like the author needed him to believe this to get the plot where it needed to go. And it's not reflective of him, scheming too high or taking more, like he has enough money and like pressing it. He doesn't lose people. It's not actually at no point is it because of the lies of Locke Lamora. It's just like, oh man.
Which is what
Yep. No, listen, I'ma just say that you set up this idea that he's going to have a reckoning with his problems, and the book is going to tell you that this all happened because of his hubris, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work because this part wasn't his hubris, and especially because all you had to do was have the Falconer be like, I'm watching you the whole time and monitoring you, don't even think about escaping, and then like, oh, he's forced into this situation, which is what's happening. That's like, the Falconer is doing that. So like, even if Locke had figured it out, this isn't something that he it is something he misread in this version, but in the one where he would have like known, hey, this is gonna go badly. But even if he knows it's gonna go badly, have a plan, do something. My guy, he just waltzes in.
He's known for making plans. So far, that's all we've gotten are his plans. So it didn't really make sense to me. So this is, again, I already said that I've, at this point, lost interest. And I felt at this point, slowly but surely, the characters became unraveled in certain ways. They didn't seem like they were acting like themselves in what little ways I was given. And it felt like they were, and again, it just for the author hand being shown for all of the reason of needing to get to point A to point B. But also, at this point, none of the gang realizes that they've been found, right? Like, there's no hint that they know where their hideout is. Why? That's the whole point of a hideout. Why don't they just hide out? They don't leave. Why can't they just hide?
There's a problem where the mage in this book can do everything, but then he doesn't do everything. So like the mage has way too much power, but then they don't always use that power. So it's like, okay, he could just find them somehow, or like he can just write people's names and force them to do things. And you're like, okay, why didn't they just come in and slaughter Kappa Barsari's sons in front of him and then kill him, which is the ultimate plan? So again, this book is like a little overly complicated, and it's trying to be smart in a way it isn't quite able to.
And the mage is a huge problem for me for the reasons you both have mentioned. He's too powerful, and his defeat is really just weird, and he's so powerful. I was like, how are they going to deal with this guy? Because it's not like they were like, oh, and here's their weakness, and also you can't kill them. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So they throw him, they throw him into the water, and then there's a bunch of scenes that have nothing to do with is Locke alive or not in his barrel of horse piss. And you see some scenes from when they're younger. You see some other stuff. It's also around now where Doña Sofia Salvara goes to see her old lady friend. And she's like, Duchess of Amberglass, who's actual name I've forgotten. It starts with an S, but I don't remember. But anyway, the Duchess of Amberglass, and she's like, I know that sometimes when people have problems, they mention it to you, and then suddenly other people show up with solutions. So you obviously know a lot of people. Can you put this in I need to contact the Duke's secret police? Some of them came and told us about the thief and this whole thing. And she basically tells her everything. And then immediately the narrative shows you that the Duchess of Amberglass, this old lady, is the spider, the secret leader of the Duke's secret police, which I love, and because she knits, and I'm like,
I loved it.
There she is,
too.
weaving her web. She's one of the best parts of the book because she's like, Stephen, I know we're having a serious conversation, so I made sure we have cakes because you listen better when you eat. Like, I know more about Stephen
Isn't it adorable
than I do about Caldo and Galdo. Like, it's such a. Anyway, and basically...
She was a great character, and that's why it's annoying. She'll be more prominent in the second half, but, like, really she should have been the counterbalance to Locke, and, like, she's a good antagonist.
Well, also, she was foreshadowed far longer before this moment. So, thinking about it, I almost feel like, why don't we get rid of the gang lord dude? I'm forgetting his name at the moment.
Kappa Barsavi?
Get rid of Kappa Barsavi. Altogether. Just get rid of him. He's not part of this main issue. Make the main issue into him getting caught, him meaning Locke, him getting caught by the government, and it being some type of back and forth between government and him. That's big stakes, like this book obviously wanted. And it takes away a convoluted series of scenes that just seems to take up space. Even though, granted, I do like what's-her-face. Not Nos, the daughter.
Nazca.
I think a better use of the Grey King would have been if, because we're going to find out, by the way, just spoiler alert, his the reason he's doing all this is for revenge. I think a much better use would have been he was the first person to be breaking the Duke's
secret
peace, and like that's a destabilizing force to the city, because part of it was that the spider, this old lady, she helped come up with the idea of like, you guys can steal from poor people but not from rich people, because crime's just gonna happen, but like we're these two counterbalanced institutions. And so like that's actually kind of an interesting idea of like, okay, now there's this force coming in that's like a wrecking ball, because that's initially what you think the book is going to be about, specifically because Chains is like, and you guys will take down the system that Karpa has done. Like, that is a much more interesting conflict for Locke to then have to engage with. It brings up moral questions of like crime and what is crime is okay and what isn't, and does he want to maintain this peace, or is it a false peace and we should just burn it all down and start over? Like, that's an interesting moral question.
I also thought someone mentioned that having part of Locke's backstory being that he actually hates the nobility, that something happened in his past that he has a problem with the nobility. So the reason he is pro continuing to steal is not for him getting money, but to take it from the nobility, which makes the choice he has to make at the end actually mean something. Like maybe he got to know
emotional stakes.
Yeah, he got to know the Salvaras, and he knows that like they don't deserve to die as much as he wanted to take their money, and that they're like he saw all the children. Like it adds stakes to this. But anyway, we'll get there when we get there. So now the spider knows that the Thorn of Camor, where he is, what he's going to do, and they made Sophia and Don Salvara agree to invite him to the Duke's big dinner a couple of days from now, and they want him to come for that. But as we know, he's currently floating around in a barrel of piss. So then finally we get there where Jean Tannen and Bug are underneath the platform where everything happened, and they see the barrel come through the floor, and it's now in the little like a canal system where they are leading towards the water. So they have to get him, they have to get the barrel, get him out of the barrel before he drowns and before it like goes into the ocean.
You know what I really liked about the scene, guys, is that so during this scene, two things happened that I really enjoyed. One, I did like the frantic nature, although I think Locke does not deserve it. But I do like the frantic nature with which Bug and John freak out. They're like, oh my God, he's going to die. And so I love, it shows so much loyalty, even once again, I don't understand why, like on screen, on theater. There are stage directions that tell me, yes, they do care about each other, but there is no dialogue or action in scenes that like, I mean, other than the basics, right? But anyway, I guess we're supposed to just buy into it because of their childhood growing up. Not the Bug part, but like, you know, Bug obviously is like their little mascot that they all love. But I really liked the spider things in this scene. Like, they're like sea roaches almost, and they just like scuttle up, and they're like creepy. But I don't know how to picture them. All I pictured them was just like big daddy long legs.
I'm gonna be honest. The action scenes in this book are written well, but I zoned out during every single one of them because it's just not. From a character perspective, they don't add anything. They're just like action to have action.
Yeah,
here.
They're not action with. Number one, real stakes. Like you know you're gonna get him out of this, and if anything, the action here is just to be like, oh, the bondsmare has magicked this heckin' sea spiders to do an attack.
Yeah, okay. So that is, I didn't like the usage of them, but I liked them, the things.
So they fight off these things. They get Locke, and they're like, oh man, we have to get back and get out of here. Caldo and Galdo were packing all of our money into carts so we could get away. And they go back to their hideout at the base, in the basement of the Temple of Pelilandro. And, oh no, the Grey King knew about this hideout and they're dead. And I actually was not expecting this.
No! They're off-screen death! They're one of the several main important characters that we've been given a backstory for and have been told to want to be interested in, only for them to both be dead off-screen, and then also for ensuing chaos of an attacker that comes thinking that Locke is still in the barrel of piss dead, or dying, and that Jean and Bug are coming here alone. So he's like, I'm going to assassinate them when they get here and everything. So, of course, Bug dies, which I'm like, wow, we're just killing everybody off in this moment, aren't we?
I did not care at all. He was a dumb character who died in a dumb way.
Yep, correct.
Like, I do not care at all.
And I really thought it was a dumb way. Like, one of the parts of the Gentleman Bastards is knowing when to, like, run and be smart. So the fact that Bug did it that way, like this, Gentleman Bastards always get their way. Like, calm down, child.
It was not characteristic of him. It was not characteristic of him.
No, it wasn't. And Jean's being taken, because Jean's the muscle. The only person that is actually good as a brawler is Jean. Like, you learn about him getting trained by this one guy. But you don't need any of that to know that Jean's the muscle. Jean's the only scene that was worth setup was the scene where Locke there's this point where there's this other little kid gang, and I have to mention it because I actually found it it's one of the only child scenes that really works as far as tying to what happens later. And it works for Jean, and I wish it had been different in the end part, but basically Locke can't fight for shit, especially when he's a kid, and so he's consistently beat up, and they can't, like, you give preference when there's another gang that is better than yours, and they refuse to give preference to this other gang, and so they realize that if they fight with Jean Tannen there, they're gonna lose, so they start trying to pick on them individually, and Locke makes a plan where he's just going to get the one guy and keep him there until Jean gets there. And there's this point where the guy's like, you can't win, and Locke has him kind of like wrapped up in a really long sleeve and just holding him, and this guy's just wailing on Locke, and Locke's like, I don't need to beat you, I just need to keep you here until Jean gets here. And the guy's like, Jean's coming, and starts freaking out and trying to get away and beating him up more. And he's like, I just need to keep you here till Jean gets there. And then Jean comes and beats the shit out of the kid. And that's how they get over this thing. And at the time, you read the scene when they're children and you're like, oh, cool scene, learning our strengths. But it connects nicely to something that happens at the end that I wish could have been. I wish Jean and Locke had been more of a focus as brothers, because it makes that scene worth so much more.
I don't know what you're talking about, so I'll figure it out in a moment.
The book is weird because it seems to think that they're like platonic life mates, but you only really get that in the second half. That you only really think that the book is kind of signaling it to you. They're not really like that.
I wish this book spent more time focusing on their friendship, because I actually like this as a combo and as an ending thing, and it would have worked. But anyway, moving on from that, so they're penniless. Jean was getting attacked. Basically, you learn that the bondsmage, if he has a name, he can like write it into something, and it'll like, Jean becomes paralyzed and can't do anything until Locke like cuts up the name. But anyway, the two of them are like, what are we gonna do? We got no money. We got nothing. They end up, Locke's injured, so they have to go, and he finds this, the dog, what was it? The dog Lynch? And he's a physiker, a doctor.
Leech.
Dog Leech, there we go. He's a physiker or a doctor, but who works in like the lower levels for other people. And the guy's like, there was this whole thing that Locke had to do to make himself seem sick so that Kappa Barsavi would believe that he couldn't come to stand beside him to avenge his daughter. And so Locke's body has been put through a lot. The dog Leech is like, you need to relax, Mr. Locke. Jean goes out to like look at stuff. You got an aside from when they were kids that Jean apprenticed at the Lady of Death temples, and so he's impersonating one of her priests to kind of get around and do stuff, and he ends up finding one of the things I completely forgot. Okay, so after they throw Locke into the water, I guess this happens later. So they throw Locke into the water, and then Kappa Barsavi throws a big party, a huge party back on his giant barge castle called the Last Grave. And while he's there, they get attacked by the Grey King. And the Grey King's like, motherfuckers, I'm taking you all down. Locke also disguises himself to go to this party to see it. And they basically, the two twin shark fighters that were his bodyguards, Kappa Barsavi's bodyguards, are like, oh, surprise, we're traitors. And actually, the Grey King's our brother. And we kill you, and we watch your sons die, and we've killed your entire line. And now the Grey King's like, I'm no longer the Grey King. You call me Kappa Raza. I'm the captain now, bitch. Kappa Barsavi's dead. Kappa Raza's like, I'm going to do everything exactly the way he did. I have no actual plans to change any of the systems. You guys just have to pledge yourself to me. So long. Anyway, while that's all happening, Jean in the aftermath is like, I'm looking at stuff and investigating things, and also there's a plague shift that came into town, and it's like, oh, please give us rations and stuff, and Kappa Ross is like, I'll send you charitable donations to show everybody how nice I am. Jean goes to kind of investigate some stuff and realizes that what they're actually taking out to the plague ship is money, and that they must have taken all of Locke's crew's money and the old Kappa Barsavi's money, and they're loading it up onto the plague ship. But while he's like kind of snooping around, those shark fighting sisters, who are Kappa Raza's sisters, are like, Jean Tannen, let us duel. And he's like, wicked sisters, meet the wicked sisters. And it's just such a, like, my boy John, you have gone the whole time not saying dumb shit. You've been like one of the only characters who doesn't say dumb shit, and you really just had to come out with, like, you could just see Lynch being like, and then I'm gonna have him say wicked sisters, me, because he calls his hatchets, he fights with hatchets, and he calls them the wicked sisters, which on its own is fine. I don't mind that as a name for your hatchets, but in this moment I'm like, Jean, you're hurting my soul.
Also, why can he walk around a city with hatchets? That never made sense.
Wasn't
to me.
it
Those
like
aren't,
tied onto
like,
his back?
secret...
Yeah, they're like underneath his coat.
Big trench coat, maybe?
But still, if he gets caught, like, why wouldn't he just carry like knives around? It doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but I guess it's like kung fu logic. And like they have a fight, and again, the fight isn't badly described, but it's like, I don't care. And he wins, and he kills the sisters with his sisters.
Yeah. But he's also injured, so he's kind of out of commission. And while all this is happening, Locke's job, God, here's the worst part of the entire book, guys. Get ready for the worst part.
It lasts so long.
As a side note, unrelated to the negativity that we've been so far literally shoving down the throat of this book, I will say there is one scene, it's not really a scene, it's a story. There is one story in particular that I am so in love with, even though it's super simple. I just like the way it's told. It's super simple. It's a story about a rug. And this has long since been passed. It's when we actually get the introduction to the last...
to the Kappa Barsavi.
Exactly. And like the way he works and maneuvers and stuff. And just as a small, because I'm not going to try to, like, the point is it's very enjoyable to listen to, at least I think so. And it's small, it's self-contained, so it's almost like a mini story in a story. And I just really like it. It's because it's basically telling you that this guy got a rug, and the rug is super nice and beautiful and whatever, but the point is he really loves that rug, and so every time he punishes a subordinate or somebody else, he has that rug rolled up and put away so that way it doesn't get dirty. And every time he does not intend for any bloodshed to happen, you can see the rug, and this happens for months on months and months and months and months, which is similar to what we've been told about Locke's way of doing things as well, as far as when it comes to a scam of some sort. So, yet again, less differentiation between characters, which is an issue, but also fun, I think. But anyway, and so finally, this one person who's been skirted, so it came to a point where if people saw the rug, they'd be like, oh, I'm not getting in trouble, we're good here. And if they didn't see the rug, they were like, we're not going to show up, or we're just going to dip. Like, we know we're going to get killed. And so finally, lo and behold, one day he has the rug out as well as a table and a whole bunch of other stuff. But of course, the person who comes gets murdered, horribly so. But the best part is the ending, which Chains is telling the story. Again, favorite character, I think, besides the couple. And he's just like, what does he say? He says something to the effect of that a rug doesn't matter as much as killing your enemies or something, but the way it's said is very clever, and I thought it was very funny.
The important thing about the story is it tells you that Kappa Barsavi will set up expectations specifically so that in the future he can upend them to his benefit. It is a story that is describing this character to you. It is one of the best uses of an aside that we get in this book. But anyway, so to get money, because they can't access none of their money, their hotel room, because they do have rooms at a different place that has money and like nice clothing in it, they can't get into it because they've lost their key, and they can't be like, yo, you guys know it's me, can you please let me into my room?
They also don't have any contacts in the city who are their friends who they could be like, hey, we're gonna chill here for a bit.
Okay, wait, actually, that's fair. Maybe they've scanned so many people that now they've just fucked all their relationships. But that being said,
none of the criminal community knows about any of their acts, which means...
I was just gonna say, but that being said then, that's not told to us. So that doesn't really make too much sense to me.
So anyway, they can't go, even though they have some money and some clothing hidden away. They can't access any of it. So now, with nothing, no good clothes, barely any disguises, Locke has to use his wit to get nice clothing so that he can go back to the Salvaras, who have been MIA, except for that scene where Sophia was like, yo, lady, I think I'm being scammed because the guy told me I was being scammed. But he has to go to the Salvaras to try to get money from them, use obviously they have to give up on this scam, but they need to get away, and so they need money. And so he needs nice clothing to go see them, because he can't go up to them and be like, I've been robbed, or whatever. Like, he doesn't know they've been had. But anyway, so he goes, and he decides to go to, like, the big money house. Like, it's like a giant bank.
So I actually think because we're so long, we should describe this whole fucking
No,
wardrobe quest.
I'm not going to
because
describe
it's
it.
so long.
All I'm going to tell you is it takes an hour, I think an hour and a half, for him to get clothing. He tries one scam twice, doesn't work. Then he creates an entirely new scam to get clothing. It is the most inane, useless. It's almost as bad, if not worse, than the pawn shop scene from earlier, because this doesn't tell us something new about Locke. It's not like, oh, how is Locke going to do things differently now that he is at the lowest point he's ever been? His friends are dead. What is he going to do? Is this going to be the point where he finally stops relying on himself and starts relying on other people and being honest with other people? No, he's going to do the exact same thing he did before.
He screws over a poor guy for no reason.
Okay, hold on a second. On that note, I was going to say this earlier, but I decided not to. You know the scene where he's pretending to be the Grey King, and the one Abram, whatever dude, is coming up, and he's like, "Oh no, don't touch me. You don't want it." Where is that empathy coming from? Why does he give a fuck about this? I'm sorry. Why does he care about this man? Why? So far, we have been told that he does not care. This is another example of how he does not care. He does not care about others. So why do we get that little tidbit? It's so uncharacteristic.
The book is weirdly trying to keep him mysterious almost in his motivations and stuff in a way that's not interesting.
But it also wants to make him good. The book wants
He's not
him
good.
to
Make him
be
a shithead. Make him a shithead whole way through.
Unfortunately, Scott Lynch wants him to be a good boy thief, but not like Robin Hood,
yes.
like he's good, but he's a thief, and he's proud that he's a thief.
Now, that being said, also with the clothes, come on. You can't tell me they can't just climb into a window and steal someone's clothes. Like what?
Exactly. Why didn't they have Locke go in and try to talk to someone, and then have Jean slip hand some, like, and also you don't need to have it. All you need is Locke to show up in clothing, and then have Jean go, "Wow, how'd you get that?" And him go, "You don't even want to," like, that's it. We don't need to know how he got the fucking clothing. The important part is that he goes to the Salvaras and he's like, "Oh, guys, we've got the one galleon ready to go for my Nigerian prince scam. We just, I need a little bit more money from the next." And Don Salvara's like, "Oh, man, actually, I'm actually in a bit of a financial stuck. Some of my money's tied up and I can't get to it. But I know you need that. So, bro, I'd like you to come to the Duke's fancy-ass dinner party. I have some friends there. I'd love to introduce you. And then we'll see if we can get them to give us the money." And Locke's like, "Absolutely, this sounds great. Love to see you there."
It sounds like an excuse for a ballroom scene that I couldn't give less of a fuck about.
And also, the Grey King goes to the spider lady, the Duchess of Amberglass, and is like, "I know you're the spider, and I'd like you to extend me an invitation to the Duke's party in a couple of nights. I've got some gifts for him." And she's like, "Absolutely not, Copper revenge," because Raza enthroned Theron means revenge. And she's like, "No, I don't know who you are. This is highly irregular. Why are you in my rooms?" And then the Bond Mage is like, "You're a given name. It would please you no more than anything to invite Caparaza to the party." And she's like, "It would please me more than anything to invite you." So anyway, she gets magicked into inviting them.
As the spider, you're telling me she does not have somebody like that on her payroll, or an item of some sort that has been enchanted to some degree that allows her to negate those effects? Why in the world would the spider, the sole center of a spy system that is aware of these things in the world, not have a backup plan for this? Anyway, I'm sorry.
Well, this is the problem, is that the mage is a complete Superman, and so, like, it doesn't really make sense that somebody wouldn't hire. Like, it makes sense if the government has like one mage on their payroll, but it doesn't make sense that this random guy has access to a mercenary mage. It would have made more sense if it was like, you can't buy mages, but oh, how did he get this guy? And it was like a life debt or something like that. Like, then it's like, okay, this one guy, these mages who never leave their place, now there's one out there. Like, it doesn't make sense.
It makes way more sense outside of just, you have to have $1,000 a day to pay this guy. And who has that much money? Or 1,000 crowns, which is more than $1,000. But anyway, so she gets magic. So now we know, the reader, that Locke's going to this party and the Great King's going to this party, and nobody knows that Locke's still alive. Not Jacques, but like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? So then we get to the party. Jean Tannen is too hurt to go to the party, and so or to do anything. So Locke has to go by himself. Locke goes. We know that the spider's setting up this trap for him. They end up seeing the Great King, who introduces him by this name that I cannot remember, and is like, Lucas Fairwhite. And they have like a very coded conversation, and Doña Silvara is like, who is that? That was kind of tense. And pretending to be Lucas, Locke is like, I don't know, my lady. I'm fine, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, she's like, you have to meet, like, she's like an old granny to a bunch of us. She's so cool. I would like to introduce you to the Duchess of Amberglass. Come, let's meet her. You know, sometimes her mind is a little addled, and so they go to see her. She's just sewing or knitting, and she won't look up. And Sophia's like, let me go get her some wine. Sometimes that helps. And he's just there sitting with the old lady, and then she stabs him in the throat with a needle. And this is the scene Will was talking about. The one thing I'll give this is I don't, because you really have to buy that this lady is so caught up in the cloaks and daggers that she's not for a second like, yes, let me trap myself in a room with an able-bodied, like, late 20-year-old man and with a poison thing and hope that goes well. Because basically she's like, hello, Thorn of Camor, you're going to prison unless you want to start talking and telling me your shit, and then I'll give you this antidote and tell me who your people are. And he's like, I have no other people, I walk alone. And then eventually he's like, I'm gonna just punch her. So he just punches her in the face, takes the antidote, drinks it, and fucks off and escapes. And he gets to, like, he's going about doing his thing, and then the falconer is in the place again, and then there's a fight with the falconer. He's got Jean, and he's gonna make Locke murder Jean, but then you realize that Locke Lamora is neither of those are his first name, and there's a point where he's like, why on earth, you got the Lamora part, but why on earth would you think my actual name was Locke? And then because you're like, how the fuck are they gonna kill this guy?
Why would he? Why would he, though?
Yeah, a mistake happens where he ends up accidentally, like, somehow the mage gets hit, and then it hurts the bird. So then they realize, oh, if we get the bird, you get the mage. So, like, they're connected, and they end up.
It would be so funny if it was him, like, stubbing his toe.
No, seriously. Something like that would work so much more. But anyway, so they end up incapacitating the mage. They tie him down. They take off all of his fingers so he can't do magic. And then they're like, we're going to cut out your tongue.
This scene is they tortured the mage by cutting off his fingers one at a time so he can't do magic, and then threatening to cut off his tongue so he can't do magic at all, which is like the one thing that would make him break. Okay, so you guys on the channel should know by now the lore of I dislike the trope of scenes where characters are tortured and it's effective. I don't understand why characters in books immediately start spilling the truth when they could just lie. Whatever. And so this scene is very vindictive of, like, this is supposed to be cathartic, you can tell. But the thing is, we didn't give a shit about the twins, so it feels mismatched. And so it feels like a very odd scene to be like, oh, God, yeah, oh, I cut off his fingers, like, oh. And then he's like, haha, you said, I didn't say I wasn't going to cut off your tongue. I just intimated it. It's a lie of omission. And then we're going to cut off your tongue anyway. And
that's so lame. Also, hasn't that been played a million times over, Will? Like, I mean, come on.
It's very tropey, and it doesn't match the emotional investment we have in seeing this mage punished. We have some, because it's not like we don't have any relatability and identifiability in John and Locke, and the mage is just kind of shitty. He's not like that likable a person. But, like, to me, this scene did not match what the rest. It just didn't match. No. And I think this is where Lynch wanted this to be a book about, like, how far Locke is willing to go, what was really important to him and what wasn't, and it didn't come together here.
Basically, they learn that Raza's plan is not actually to take over the like seedy side of the city of Comor. He actually is here on revenge. His dad was a merchant who opposed the secret peace, and he was killed by Kappa Barsavi to keep him from opposing, and that the spider knew about it, and so he's actually here to just take down kind of everyone and the nobles because he hates the nobles. So the presents, because he gifted the Duke a bunch of really pretty looking weird sculptures. And they're actually filled with, a very long time ago, we got a story about Wraithstone, where if you burn Wraithstone and people inhale it, it kind of takes their mind away and it turns them into like docile, obedient.
It's smoke lobotomy. Is essentially what it is.
It's a smoke lobotomy. That's exactly what it is.
That's a good comparison.
God, I'm really on my game today.
You really are. Guys. And you learn about that much earlier, and so then
that's so flippantly. You really are.
You know,
Maria's done. Maria's very done with me sometimes.
No, it's not that. It's that I'm just trying to hustle through. I'm hungry.
Yes, no, I got you.
I would like a cup of tea.
Okay, look, let me take us home. Let me take us home. The mage's like, haha, you must make a decision between saving everyone and the child of the nobility or getting revenge on Caparaza. And Locke is like, damn it, I guess I'll go save them. This is not really a moral choice, though, because we don't really understand his morals before this anyway. Like, it doesn't really make a ton of... This is not an effective moral choice.
And it's not a choice. He immediately is like, it's no choice at all. Like, it's not even like he thinks about it.
Yeah, again, if he had not liked the nobility from the beginning, it might have been some character development. But basically, he now has the dumbest fucking scene in the book where he's going back and the guy who regards the merchant couple, who's like a real dude, he catches him and he's like, haha. And Locke, who is supposed to be this incredibly intelligent character, is like, I gotta get to the tower and save everyone. And the guy is like, no, you can't, you're a criminal. And he's like, and then Locke for like 10 minutes from this guy and then the next guy is just like, guys, I don't have time to explain. You gotta take me there and save it. And
just
everyone's
explain.
Like, no. And he's like, please. And they're like, no. And he's like, please.
This entire time,
stupid.
I'm like, just tell him there are bombs of Wraithstone that are going to go off and turn everyone into docile potatoes.
But again, if he's such a con artist and such a master of words and deception, why can't he have a more compelling argument than, guys, seriously, you gotta take me there?
And also, it's taking time because you're not being honest. If you were just honest, they probably would take you in sooner.
Movie directors pull that shit when there's a lack of screen time to be had. This is a book. What we don't need to... Why? That's the dumbest shit ever.
It is. It's such a rough scene because, like, and basically you find out that Caparaza is by himself on the barge, just like chilling by himself. You can go get him, or you can go defuse the alchemical bomb.
Oh my god, there's so many things that could have happened to fix all these issues already.
Locke gets in, and then he ends up talking to the spider. The spider's like, oh, actually, my brain, I remember, I was enchanted by the thing, and I remember you were right, let's go check those things. And they are filled with Wraithstone, and now everybody's like, we gotta defuse them, and the only way is this whole thing happens, but they say that. They figure out that part, and now Locke's like, you gotta let me go. I'm gonna go kill Caparaza. And they're like, why should we let you go? And he goes, listen, he hid my money and Kappa Barsavi's money on some shit barges. Also, the plague ship, he's gonna release that. It's got to plague people on it. He's gonna take the whole city down. You gotta burn the plague ship. You just gotta burn the whole thing to the ground. And you're like, weird move, bro. But anyway, they're like, okay. But if we ever see you again, you know, we're taking you down. And he's like, got it. So he escapes and he goes, and Jean's too weak to come with him. And Jean's like, I'll just be outside. And he's like, I'll do this. And he goes and he has a standoff with the Grey King. And the Grey King's like, haha, you're not actually good at fighting, are you? And he's like, no, I'm not. And then he does the thing where he's just like, at one point, the Grey King's like, you're not going to win. There's no way you're going to beat me. And he's like, I don't have to beat you. And at this point, he's beaten. He's already had like a sword stabbed through his arm. His wrist is broken. He's literally just, and he's like, I don't have to beat you. I just have to wait for Jean to get here. And the Grey King's like, Jean's coming. Because everybody knows Jean Tannen. And also, Jean Tannen killed his sisters, who were like two of the greatest fighters ever. And he's like, oh God. And you're like, but Jean's injured. And I thought Jean was going to come in and stab him, which is actually what I wanted to happen. But instead, he's like, I just have to wait for Jean to get here. And then he takes a coin and he throws it. So it sounds like somebody's stepping through. And as the guy turns, he ends up like stabbing him in the side. He falls and then he just like stabs him to death. And that's how the Grey King goes out. But now he's dying. Jean comes and is like, you fool! Why didn't you wait for me? And he's like, it's fine, leave me here. You're gonna get caught. And he's like, no way I'd leave you here. And then eventually he wakes up and he's back at the dog Leech's house. And he's like, oh, wow. You survived. Congratulations. And now they're like, we got to get out of here. We got to go live a new life somewhere else. And then there's a scene with the spider and the merchant couple, the Salvaros, where she was like, he tricked us. There was no money on the barge. And then she was like, but the money was on the plague ship. And they were like, but he told you to destroy the plague ship. Why would he do that? And he's like, he told us he was a priest of the crooked king, or the crooked warden, the 13th god. It was a death offering for his slain friends. He sent all that money to the deep because he loved his friends so much. He told us and we were too. And they were like, oh man, we lost all our money. And then she's like, also, you owe me something because you guys suck. And they were like, what? We just lost a ton of our money. And she was like, you guys made a lot of mistakes in this and you didn't handle it correctly. And then they were like, what do we have to... They were like...
Censored?
Yeah, censored. But anyway, and they were like, oh no, what do we have to do? And she's like, you're going to take over my position when I die. Congratulations, I've picked you two to be the spiders. And they were like, we're going to be the Duchess and Duchy of Duke of Aberdlass? And she was like, it's a terrible job, but someone's got to do it. And the thing is, she was like, you both have proven to be really smart. No, fuck that. Only Sophia... Only Sophia showed any intelligence of being like, let me try and confirm this story. Old Don Salvara? That guy should not be... She should just be like, Sophia, you showed a lot of promise.
Well, okay, wait. But that doesn't make any sense. Like you're saying, if he's never involved in that, first of all, how does she know that? And also, that doesn't support anything. He's not smart enough, obviously. And then second of all, like... it doesn't really feel thematically correct because the old lady's a woman, the spider, like, you know what I mean?
So here's the thing, and basically this is where the book ends. I don't think anything else happens, right?
There's just the scene where they're going away, and John and him have an argument, and he's like, John, it's like you were the one who almost died. Like, fucking relax, and that's how the book ends. And they leave Camor, like they fuck off. But yeah.
So this book has 2 sequels. It's one of 7 books. This is such a messy book.
7?
Well, the last one he released was the 3rd book back in 2011. So I don't think we're going to see all 7. The thing about it is that this is an incredibly messy book. The author is obviously very talented. So normally I would be like, you know what? I kind of am interested in the second one in the series because I want to see how he refines it. Me and friend of the channel, Lindbergh, read The Blade Itself, which I thought was a really messy book, but actually kind of promising. And then I'm kind of interested in the second book, and we'll probably read it at some point, especially because it has battles. My military fiction arc will be starting soon, as soon as my horror one winds down. But this book, from what I understand, this second book is worse. It's a lot of Locke like moping around and nothing really happening, and then the third one is even more complicated. And so I would like to see the author write, if he had written something that was less masturbatory in terms of like, ooh, the super cool thief who talks like I do, you know, like if he wasn't writing that, I would be really interested in his book because, you know, even his prose at times are good. There's a part about, you know, they got so full of, they were shot so full of arrows that they would basically like a hedgehog would have fucked them. Like that kind of
that's
joke
the part
that some
of
people
the rug
hate and
story.
some people love.
No, that's part of the rug story. That's towards the end. And I thought when it hit that point, I was like, this is fucking gold. And then it went a little bit further and then ended the story. And I was like, oh man, best part of the whole book.
And there's a part too where like one of the brothers I think is described as like he had a nose that like was like the front knife in a dueling, like it preceded him like the front knife in a duel or something like that. And so like there's some really funny good parts. The writing is strong. Again, it's just that the characters and it's so messy. And the characters again, Locke has so little internality. We don't know why he does things, and he doesn't act any different than anyone else.
And we don't get enough of the characters that are really unique. the whole point of the Salvaras becoming the new spider feels really unearned. I would have liked if Sophia actually in that case got more screen time and we could have seen her being really smart and it was just her. But like the book, you can tell sometimes that this book was written for certain scenes. It was written towards certain scenes. So that you could tell that he liked the idea of Sophia and Don Salvaro, whose first name I still don't know, becoming the new spider, but it never feels earned. And there's just certain things where he was just like, this, we just have to get here. Like, this is just the ending I'm working towards, and this is how it has to go. And I think that's part of the problem, where it's got that feeling of like first novel-itis of like, we don't know how to kill our darlings. As far as we don't know when to cut stuff, what scenes should go. This book would work so much better if it was tighter, if it was shorter, and if, because of it being shorter, Locke can be a bit more mysterious. There is something about just spending so much time with a character, but getting none of his internality that just doesn't work.
There's a reason Johnny Depp, Jack Sparrow, is not the main character of Pirates of the Caribbean. It's actually interesting watching that movie because both Will and the chick, I forget her name, they both spend more time interacting with Jack Sparrow than they do with each other, actually. Like, he is a character that kind of links them, but isn't the main one. And that's why this book should be the story of the Silvaros and how this middle-class couple got stuck in this stupid Nigerian prince scheme. So many of the twists work better. We don't figure out that the Midnighters are Locke until much later, and that's a rug pull for them. We don't figure out the old lady is the spider till much later. And like, I just would love to see a married couple having to deal with shit like this. Like, that's such an underused thing. And
well, also there was that one scene too where you get like a little bit of them giggling in the background, and it seems like their relationship is really sweet and everything.
Mm-hmm. And that would be kind of interesting. And then also, you get to have Locke in the distance be the cool trickster. You know what I mean? And then he comes into his own in other books, but like here and then again, that plays into the whole like, okay, is it worth keeping the secret piece? Is it okay for them to steal from poor people? We're rich people, but like that all of a sudden plays into the themes of the city a lot more, and like they like Locke, but now they're at odds with Locke by the end of the book.
You know what is another good example too of that lack of internality, but the usage of it is successful, is the one fucking book we read together that I didn't read the second one of, but you guys did. The thief one, the Greeky one.
Oh, yeah, the Queen of Atolia.
Yeah, like, because there's still that like mysterious, who is this character? What is he about? But anyway, I was just thinking of a different, like, not using that buffer of somebody between the other characters to have the lack of internality. But I feel like that's a really good example of a main character that has the lack thereof. I often would make the joke when I was obsessed with Pirates of the Caribbean and read fan fiction for it that Jack Sparrow is basically like the love interest for both Will and Elizabeth, and they're just both really like hot and bothered about it, and they are just like not ready to accept a three-way relationship.
It really is. Again, if you watch that movie, they spend most of their time with him, and that's because he is a good contrast to both of them. Like that movie really does function very well, and you can see why it became so popular and why the second one isn't quite as good. But like that's what this should be. But this is one of those cases where like it's often the case that writers are good at writing the things that they're not interested in writing. And Zira, Buttonrose on our Discord, and I were talking about that in terms of like, we talked about how Akatar loves to have a bunch of training montages and day in the life of people going to the gym. And yet that's not actually what her strength, Sarah J. Maas's strength as a writer is. A lot of times writers are better when they have to write from the viewpoint of a secondary character in their world. Like that would just be such a more interesting story than the one that they're actually interested in.
Yep.
And like I think, and like, going back to that series that can't be named because Katie is an alcoholic, a lot of the secondary viewpoints that he had to write after already creating them or aren't the main character are actually really interesting because they're not the main character, and he's able to see them from a more impartial perspective.
So just to end it, this book is a wild one because on one hand, there's such competence here and such interesting things, and it's not like where he suffers with world building or how to integrate that into the story. He actually does it quite well. There's a lot of interesting scenes, but it just structurally, it's just a mess. This is a mess, and some people. So I will say there was a few people that really enjoyed this book, and I can see why. If these things that we mentioned are not things, like if you can kind of turn your brain off and kind of not pay attention to some of that stuff, or just like you're here to hang out, a lot of this,
or if you're the kind of guy who's like, oh yeah, I want to be Locke, which I think is a lot of what happened at the time period, because it came out during, again, the same time as Name of the Wind, which was also a lot of like, ooh, let's be the Mary Sue main character syndrome.
I get it. I get why people finished this book and wanted to read the next one. For me though, it was just like it's great. Like I'm almost more frustrated because of how good parts of it were, that I was like, how did this happen?
Yeah, I expected this to be more of a roast than it was. Like there are I expected to hate it, and instead I was mostly just very bored. Like there are strengths. He's a talented writer, but unfortunately he hasn't written anything else. He apparently wrote a kind of throwback to planetary romance type books, you know, where like people in the 60s get thrown onto planets where everyone inexplicably has medieval. Which actually I would be more interested in reading than the sequel, because I think that would be kind of interesting. Also,
I would love
the main
to do
character is
that.
female.
Yeah.
I would love to try that.
I think he did it as like an online serial or something like that. Serial as in S, not C. One thing we didn't even mention, by the way, because it's fucking stupid, is there was a whole female character who Locke apparently had a romance with, that were like, she's going to eventually show up, but she doesn't in this book. You're supposed to be like, ooh, what happened there?
Also, why did she not show up even when they were children? They were supposed to be raised together. Like, and we didn't even mention her because she's not important.
No, but otherwise, that is the end of the book.
Very nice, Katie. You should have shown, though, the author filleting Locke. But anyway, all right. Thank you all. We love you, our parasocial darlings.
Bye!